Hello to everyone listening, and welcome back to yet another episode of your Slightly Mighty podcast, the local podcast created to illuminate the thoughts and experiences of the many talented musicians, venue owners, and concert promoters who make Charleston, South Carolina their home. My name is Hop, your host and humble facilitator. If you have any ideas or suggestions to help make the show better and more useful, please continue to send them along to me at hopturn@gmail.com. That's HOPTURN@gmail.com. This will be our 7th episode together. So thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. I hope you are finding it to be worthy of your time and attention. If you do, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast on whatever social media platforms you inhabit as you see fit. Your help will go a long way towards growing the show's audience and ensuring future episodes and potential future seasons. Special thanks, as always, to our pals at Maybank Public House for hosting us again. We needed a place to record this show, and GM Drew Madden stepped up and offered this great space almost immediately. So please stop by and grab some dinner and a couple beers and thank the guy. That said, let's get down to it. Sitting down with us today, we have two well-known and well-regarded local musicians, Andy Greenberg and Bobby Hogg. You probably know Andy from bands like tribute band Runaway, original bands like Space Armadillo, and many other popular projects. Bobby regularly performs on Wednesdays at the Poorhouse with the long-running Grateful Dead tribute The Reckoning, as well as many other regional bands and projects himself. Both men are in the new local tribute supergroup, Bears Gone Phishin, which covered the music of the jamband Big Three, Phish, the Grateful Dead, and Widespread Panic. Both Andy and Bobby have been filling rooms with nodding heads and dancing feet for a long time now, and I'm so excited to have them here with us today. Hello, guys, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
All right. So let's get started with some early stuff. Okay, we back way up on this show because it's about the musicians. Formative years. How do we get started? What's some of our earliest memories, early bands, early musical experiences? Andy, you want to go first?
Well, my first experience in a band was in high school. I was about 12 I was probably 13 or 14, and I was playing in the middle school jazz band. And I put together a combo to play at a local coffee shop. We couldn't play at bars or anything because of the alcohol. So there was this coffee shop. I don't even remember the name of it. And it was drums, keys, guitar, and a saxophone, I think. So we did that like once a week for a while. And then by the time I was about 15, I was able to put together a band to play in a bar. And that was
at 15 years old.
Yeah, 15.
Nice.
And that was at a place. It used to be called, I think it was called Shooters in Florence. And we did we had a couple of originals, but we did some Dave Matthews Band covers and a Phish cover too, and probably did some Widespread Panic. And that was just mostly high school kids that were there. I don't even know still to this day how we did that. It's probably illegal, but the bar isn't open anymore, so I'll go ahead and disclose.
Those were back in the day. What year was that?
That was probably 1995.
Yeah, the 90s were a different time. I did a little of that myself, like just walking around and being like, yeah, I'm sure I'm old enough. It's fine.
Yeah, it was weird because everybody there was definitely underage, and I don't think anybody was drinking though. I don't know how the whole thing came about. But anyway, yeah, that was a band that I put together, and those were the first two. I also sang. My first thing in a band was I was a singer for my brother's band, and that was probably when I was about 14 as well. And we didn't do a whole lot of gigs, mostly just like my birthday party and my cousin's bat mitzvah after party kind of thing.
Nice. Raising hell.
You know it.
And Bobby, what about you? What's some early stuff? How'd you get going here?
Well, I got my first acoustic guitar when I was around 10 for Christmas. I was 10 or 11, so it would have been the early 90s. And I just loved it. And my brother got a drum set. He's a year younger than me, so we would just kind of jam. And we it was the early 90s, mid 90s, so we were into Green Day and, Beastie Boys and all those awesome bands back then.
Sure.
And then in high school, I kind of jammed with some friends and had some fun with it, and started playing my first gigs publicly in college at College of Charleston. Came down here in 2002 and met a good friend, Elliot Genther, in music class. It was an intro to music theory class at College of Charleston, and my other good friend, Ryan Steinwedel, we call him Noodles, and then Elliot had a friend named John Ely, and we decided to jam together one day, and it was 4 guitarists. So we ended up getting a gig right away at this place called Cafe Zupa, which is down on John Street. It was Panavino. I'm not sure what it is now, but it's been a few things. And we got a gig, so it was four guitars on a gig together. We were 18, 19 years old.
How'd that go?
That was awesome. I mean, I wish I had it on video. We could watch it again. I think we did record some of it. It was a lot of fun, but it became evident that we needed a bassist. So I decided to play bass.
Oh, cool. So you started off on guitar.
I did, yeah.
Nice.
And still, I mean, that was 23 years ago now, and I still play, both bass and guitar. But that's what got me realizing, hey, there's a market for bassists there. There's bands always need a bassist, and I felt like I should start playing bass if I wanted to get a lot of gigs. And sure enough, that worked out. And our band was called Swiftwater Rescue, and we played around the early to mid 2000s, downtown Charleston, Kickin' Chicken, Mellow Mushroom, places like that, and that was a lot of fun.
I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding that like Kickin' Chicken was where it was at back in the day for a minute. That's one of the first like spots you could play a lot if you wanted to.
Oh, we loved it. Kickin' Chicken, Mellow Mushroom, Portside, Silver Dollar, all those, college bars, and we were all in college, and all our friends came, and it was just so much fun. And we actually made money doing it, so it was just great.
So you were going to college for music too? So
I was a music
living
minor.
Your dream. Okay.
I was a music minor, jazz studies, jazz guitar, and graduated in 2004. And looking back, maybe I should have gotten a degree in music, but at the time I enjoyed what I was doing, and still doing it now. So
that's great. So what do you guys find gratifying about being in tribute bands? I mean, I know that you guys have all kinds of other projects that you do, but we're specifically here to talk about your project together. So I'm kind of going that direction. And a lot of people know that you guys are you're in The Reckoning, and Andy, you're in Runaway Jen. What is it about those bands that you find to be enlightening and gratifying?
Well, playing in tribute bands in general, I grew up. Well, I never actually grew up, but when I was,
I think that's a lot of us.
Yeah, when I was younger, when I first started playing music, other than like just learning stuff on the piano from my piano teacher, I was actually taking songs that I liked, like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jimi Hendrix, and even Phish, and figuring out specific guitar parts, like picking them out, basically transcribing them, and then learning them. So I started out covering other people's material. I was writing original material for sure, but you don't learn in the same way when you're writing versus when you're transcribing or covering other people's stuff. So just like the sheer sort of connections and ideas that I established in my own mind and playing ability by learning other people's songs and licks and solos and stuff like that has definitely been crucial in making me become a better musician. Also, obviously, it's the vocabulary that you can use to play with other musicians that know the same songs.
Could you back up a second and kind of like elaborate on the vocabulary terminology that you're?
Yeah, I mean, like, so say you learn in your formative years as a player, say you learn like a Jimi Hendrix guitar solo, there's two things there. You learn it and you can play it over that Jimi Hendrix song, but if you think about what you're doing and you understand how it applies to the underlying music, then you can basically extrapolate that and apply it to any other song that you play. I mean, whether or not it works is a different question, but right. You can do that in theory. It's sort of like learning a language. So if you learn, it's like, say the notes and chords are like letters and words, and then when you learn a song, it's kind of like a sentence. And then you can take that sentence and play it in the proper context. If you're in the middle of a jam or something, and all of a sudden you're like in your mind, oh yeah, that thing I learned whenever would fit well there, and you do that. And after you learn tons and tons of little phrases, vocabulary, and you put that in your bag of tricks, eventually you become a fluid improviser where you can just kind of come up with stuff on your own based on all those building blocks that you learned. But so that's a fundamental thing. I mean, I think all musicians probably start out to some degree as tribute by learning other people's stuff. But then playing in tribute bands, it was something that I did in New Orleans originally when I was at Tulane in order to just grab people, to get people to come to the show.
Okay.
I had an original band.
When was that? Just curious.
That was probably like 99, 2000, 2001.
Okay.
And so we had an original project, but ultimately then it was still like it is now. And if you want people to come out in bigger numbers, and you can say like, we're an 80s tribute band, and all of a sudden you're going to have 400 people that don't know who you are. But if your original band, it's typically like a couple of close friends. And that's just the way that it works based on audiences and the way that they come to shows, what they come out to see. And then now, as I got older, I did, I mean, I've always done original things, but since I've been in Charleston, it's always been a culture where people are coming out to hear songs that they know. It's like the classic King Street thing. Everybody's asking for Wagon Wheel and stuff like that.
Right.
And so at some point, it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. I mean, you can go out there.
I see what you're saying. So you're picking your poison a little bit, but it's stuff that you like.
Yeah, I mean, well, so yeah, when I first started in Charleston, I was playing like "Don't Stop Believing" and all these popular songs that I liked, but they weren't really like the kind of stuff that I would listen to or learn a whole lot from. Although I did learn stuff from those songs for sure if I really sat down with them. But when I got to the point where I started playing at the Poorhouse, and we could actually play Phish songs, or songs like we're talking about, like that we play now, that I actually really liked more. That was like, oh well, like this is like, this doesn't feel like playing wedding covers that everybody just wants to hear. It was more gratifying. But in the world that we live in, also now, from when I was in high school, it used to be posters and word of mouth, but now you can actually market things on the internet based on people's interests. And so just from a sheer trying to get people in front of you perspective, and trying to get gigs and keep getting gigs, playing cover music or having some sort of an idea like that, you're definitely just going to get bigger crowds. That's why you see tribute bands in bars all the time. People are like, why does everybody book tribute bands? Well, why does everybody always come out to see tribute bands? It's the way it is. The bars want to sell alcohol, and we want to sell tickets, and ultimately, that's a good way to do it.
Sure. What is it about these bands that you guys have both chosen to cover? And Bobby, did you want to respond to that too? I didn't want to cut you off either.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as playing covers and tribute bands, I tried to be a songwriter, and I just found that it wasn't. I'm not a poet. I wasn't great with lyrics. That college band I mentioned, Swiftwater Rescue, we played a lot of original music, and everyone in the band wrote songs. And I probably wrote 10 songs or so that we would play on a regular basis. Oh. I never found it that enjoyable to play the songs I wrote. I didn't think they were that good. I just didn't. I always enjoyed playing other people's music. I really love playing music in general. So whether or not
there's a long tradition of that.
Yeah. So definitely. As I got older, and my early 20s, mid 20s, and I thought, okay, well, songwriting to me doesn't come naturally, and I felt like I was forcing it, and I was like, I wanted to be a professional musician, and I knew you could make a living doing it. So just, out of necessity, I said, well, I'm just going to work on my instruments, try to get good at guitar, try to get good at bass, banjo, whatever else, and not worry about the songwriting. So, out of that comes, well, you're playing gigs and you got to play music, so you end up playing other tribute bands and cover bands, which I'm fine with. I enjoy it. I just love playing music. It doesn't necessarily need to be music that I wrote. So
right. What is it about the bands that you choose to focus on that kind of draws you to it? Like, what is it? Is it challenging? Is it inspirational? Or both? God,
I think it's probably, everyone would have a different answer for this, but for me, you do what you like, right? I mean, you do what you know. So I like Paul Simon, I like Grateful Dead, I like Bob Marley. So that's this kind of stuff I want to play, I mean, and sometimes I do a lot of wedding gigs and things where I have to learn songs that I'm not going to say I don't like them, but I didn't necessarily, it's not something I would normally listen to. And so, but once I learn it, I'm like, hey, this is a pretty fun song to play. I might be playing bass on a Miley Cyrus song, or something that I wouldn't necessarily listen to on a regular basis, but it's still fun just to play the music. And but if I'm gonna start a band or be in a band, like with Andy and Bears Gone Phishin. I mean, those are just bands I like. So it's just fun to play the music that you like to also listen to.
Yeah. It's natural.
Yeah, and it
Natural
doesn't feel
fit.
like work. I mean, like if we have a gig coming up and like, okay, here's the song list. And I'm like, all right, here's 3 or 4 songs that I have never played before. I'm motivated and excited to learn them because,
Yeah.
and I've when you've heard a song 1,000 times, you've learned it through osmosis to some extent. So then it's just putting your fingers with what your brain already knows. And that just is fun to be able to figure it out like a puzzle. Like, okay, like I've heard this song so many times, I'm going to actually look at the chart here and figure out what they're doing. And then you can add that to your repertoire of skills, your skill set. So,
Yeah. So how does the music scene at large benefit from tribute bands? And I'm only asking that because there's so many people on the show are part of it. And I myself, I'm kind of in this scene a little bit. How do you feel like it benefits musicians? This show's about musicians, by the way. It's not about the audience. Nobody even listens to it outside of musicians, I don't think.
Well, I think one thing for if you are specifically looking at Bobby and I and like what we've done in Charleston, Bobby doing the Reckoning and starting doing that every Wednesday, it sort of builds a nexus where people all come together and congregate on that particular day. And ultimately, musicians want people to build a scene, you know what I mean, to start to make friends with each other and go to shows together. So, regardless of whether it's an original band or a tribute band, if that is the spark that makes people come together and build a scene and build an audience, that's going to be good for musicians, not just the ones that are playing that particular show. I mean, you could really look at the Poorhouse in general and see over the years how that scene of people that come to a lot of the different shows that are like the Poorhouse regulars are enriched by the opportunity of being able to come there every Wednesday night and build that as like a habit. And so then you've got musicians that may come to the Poorhouse and play on different nights, and they may have people that come to their show because those people were already sort of addicted to the Poorhouse from coming out on Wednesdays. So that's one thing right there, is it builds a scene. Same thing with what we did with Runaway Jen. There wasn't really a Phish scene and group that was like that had kind of coalesced together. I didn't feel like at that time there were small pockets of people that listened to Phish that were friends with each other, but then we started playing Phish every Sunday, and all of a sudden those groups teamed up and got to know each other, and then you start to build these clusters of people, and then ultimately you're cultivating music listeners, and the style of music that we're playing, Phish and the Grateful Dead, you can say some people just go there and aren't listening to what they're playing, but compared to what I experienced on King Street, the percentage of people that are actively listening to what you're playing is ridiculously higher.
What do you mean? I mean, don't mean to cut you off, but so you're talking about like people not listening to your. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so when I played on King Street, I played with Dave Seitz in the King Street Band every Monday for 3 years, or we play at Midtown and O'Malley's, on Fridays and Saturday nights. So like I'd say 60 to 80% of the people are there just for the social scene to party, and they're literally not listening to the music at all.
Right.
It's
background music. It's in the background. Yeah,
it could not be a band for them, and they would still have the same experience. Certainly, you have a small percentage of people that are up there around the stage that are watching the musicians and listening to it, that are really interested in the music of it. But again, that's the Upper King Street thing that I experienced. And then you come out to the Poorhouse, and you've got bands like the Grateful Dead and Phish, and the people that go to see those shows are a different kind of audience. They're actually actively listening to the music. So rather than having side conversations and randomly screaming, play Freebird or Wagon Wheel, they're actually actively listening to what you're doing. So those
are bands that are like engender musical knowledge.
Exactly.
I feel like, if you're listening to the Grateful Dead, you're hearing a lot of the American Songbook. If you're listening to Phish, like it or not, you're listening to really complicated, fantastic music.
And back to the previous question about why these bands, I think that ultimately, as an artist, regardless of whether we're playing original cover music, we want people to listen to what we're playing, because it is music's a communication. You know, some people may consider it background music. Maybe it's subliminally a communication thing for them to make them feel comfortable or make them feel social. But the kind of music that we're playing, where there are longer improvisational sections and it's a conversation on stage, we want the audience to understand what we're trying to communicate, and we want to communicate something that the audience is going to understand that's unique to that moment, you know? So we really are trying to foster a two-way street relationship where we're going to benefit as musicians and they're going to benefit as music listeners. And even we will, both audience and performer, benefit by the communication and the connection with other human beings in general, just to walk away from the experience.
I think it's interesting
like
that you keep talking about language and communication on stage and with the crowd and with the venue. It's interesting. Do you feel like that as well, Bobby? I mean, is that?
Yeah, well,
that's an interesting point. So.
Live music, a band or a solo artist or whatever it is, live music, I mean, it's all about bringing people together, right? We could all listen to a CD at our house by ourselves, and we all do that, and that's great. But if you're going to play live, the whole point is to bring people together. You want people to come to experience it. The bar wants to make money, the venue wants to make money, the musician wants to make money. We all want a big crowd when we play. And it almost, because of that, I think the question was, how does the tribute scene help the local scene?
Yeah, well, yeah.
The type of music the band is playing is almost a moot point. It's like, it doesn't, it could be cover songs, it could be an original band, it could be ambient, it could be free jazz, it could just be noise. But if there's an audience in attendance, then it's creating a scene. People are meeting each other, they're networking. So I just think any band, whether it's a tribute band or an original band, that has a crowd that comes out to see them is helping the scene. Okay,
well, one of the reasons why I went there right off the bat was we're sitting right across the street from everybody's favorite place, the Poorhouse.
I've heard good things about the Poorhouse.
Good things about it. I've heard it's a shithole. But how does this scene you're talking about, that I honestly feel like the Grateful Dead, the culture that the Grateful Dead created. I'm an old Grateful Dead guy too, and Phish more currently, I suppose. How do you feel like that scene has created the Poorhouse scene? Are they kind of similar? Have they influenced each other? Is there a sound, like a Poorhouse sound, that maybe came from that?
Well, Bobby, no, you that's a good one for you, because you were there from the reckoning from the beginning, and you know more about the Grateful Dead than I do.
That's basically an institution, right?
That's a great question for you.
Well, I think something about jam bands, and we could all say, what is a jam band? But let's
get ready to ask that question next.
So let's just pretend like we all agree on what jam band means. And
let's hear what you think.
What a jam band is?
Yeah, what is a jam band? Let's go ahead and get into that first. A jam band is what to you?
I think the term has become so vague at this point that it could be anything.
Actually, yeah,
because you can go to a festival that is a quote-unquote jam band festival, and there'll be a bluegrass band, a reggae band, a rock band, a blues band, a country band, and they're all considered jam bands. Right. So it's not genre specific. But for some reason, especially like when we're doing Wednesdays, and probably in any other town that has Grateful Dead tribute bands, for some reason, the people that like that music seem to be drawn to like creating a community. And it probably happens in other styles of music too, but
there's something about the Grateful Dead at
the Poorhouse, where it's a lot of the same people that come all the time, and they've become friends, and it's people that want to get there and meet other people, and during the set break, they want to socialize and meet other people, and it's not like people are keeping to themselves. It's like they're there to help create. The band is just playing the music. We're providing the music, but the people in the crowd are the ones that are really creating the scene. There would be no scene without them. There would be no community without them. So they're the ones that are really creating this community, and the Poorhouse is providing the backdrop or the setting, and we're providing the sounds, but they're the ones creating the community, and that's, I mean, maybe that's just evolutionary in humans to like gather around noises, whether it's people playing drums around a campfire 10,000 years ago or whatever. It's just people are drawn and attracted to it, and that's great, and that's why we're here talking today.
Yeah. Do you guys feel a certain responsibility to those communities? I mean, what is that like? I mean, I know that when you're standing on the stage and you're looking out and you're playing somebody's favorite song, that you have to feel something.
Yeah, I mean,
towards that person.
For Runaway Jen, if somebody online is requesting songs or something like that, then I'm going to try my best to get it in the rotation for that show and play that song. So the responsibility specifically there is just to give the person what they want to hear. I might not want to play that song as much as another song, but ultimately I do want to play that song as much as another song because somebody out there wants to hear it for some specific reason. And so there's a connection there in responsibility or trying to give people what they want. But I think that, yeah, I mean, definitely, if you're not feeling good one day, when we were doing the Sundays every week for many years, if you're not feeling good one day, and I'm sure Bobby and the guys at the Reckoning get this, it's like that those people are going to be there and that they need you and they want to hear it, and so there is something there for me that always drove me to get there, and to do all this in the first place. When you play a lot of shows and people tell you about how much it means to them and what it does for them, and then, or even if they don't tell you and you can just see it, it definitely makes it's gratifying as a human being and as a performer to facilitate.
You're allowed to stutter.
the social connections, and then also facilitate some sense of belonging and happiness that it could bring to somebody else. There's definitely a lot of joy in doing that, and responsibility secondary to that joy. You want to give the people what they want, and ultimately you're gonna. I end up liking it more if the people like it more, I would say. I think that's probably true.
Okay, so you're feeding off the crowd. That's getting that reciprocal kind of energy going on. Nice.
Absolutely.
So what exactly defines the jam band sound? What is it about it? I mean, I understand there's an improvisational element, obviously, the jamming part of it. But I mean, I think what you were alluding to is it's kind of become its own genre in a way. But I mean, how do you have a genre where all the things are different?
Well,
Enlighten me.
It's not really. I mean, it's a ubiquitous term.
It's a term.
If you wanna really,
people do use it as a genre, though.
If you really get technical about it, it's not really a genre. Okay. Well, see, I think about it like this. Genres originally were created as marketing, right? So you like rock and roll, you'll love this band. They're a rock and roll band. You like blues, you'll love this band. They're a blues band. So at some point, somebody realized that the Grateful Dead was sort of another thing, and people could sense that. And if you want to say that they were the first jam band, I don't think people called them a jam band necessarily. Maybe the Allman Brothers were the same thing. I think Phish was actually the band that was referred to as a jam band first, and that was like in the 90s by, I think, Jonathan.
That's interesting.
Who was it? It was the guy, one of the guys from Relics. He wrote a book called Jam Bands, and they bought jambands.com. But
so he coined the term then.
Well, I think the term was used loosely, but he's the one who's officially created with it. And I can always spout out his name like very easily, but for some reason I can't think of it right now. So they did it as a marketing thing, right? Relics magazine was like the Grateful Dead magazine, but there's this whole scene that had developed around the Grateful Dead, which included bands like Phish and that came later. So if you can go out there and say, hey, if you like jam bands, you'll love these guys. So it's not really a genre. To me, it's more of a marketing term because genres have a specific sound characteristic. But jam bands do not, like Bobby was saying earlier, jam bands do not have a specific sound characteristic.
But they do have an inclination, though.
I think the inclination has to do with the audience and the way that they experience the shows. that goes back maybe to what I was saying about the way that active audiences on King Street would listen, a small percentage, but I think jam bands in general, people are there to listen to the music, and regardless of whether it's rock and roll or rap or anything like that, the people are tending to be more just interested in the music as opposed to the scene in general, which is ironic because the scene is such a huge part of it. It's weird. I don't know. It's a hard thing to explain, but that's kind of where I start. Oh, thank you. That's usually where I start that conversation.
Hey, I appreciate. Actually, it's one of the reasons I brought you guys here because I mean, obviously, I've also dabbled in the genre that's not a genre myself sometimes. So
well, it's funny because you could say the exact same thing about jazz music.
Yes, exactly what I was trying to go to. Yes,
jazz. Yeah. Oh yeah, jazz music. But what is jazz music? It's 100 different types of music or more within that quote unquote genre. And there's a famous quote like I can't explain to you what jazz music is, but I know what it is when I hear it. Right. So it's like jam bands. Yeah, I mean it's every genre, and I can't explain what it is, but I know what it is when I hear it. Or the obvious, simple answer to this is, well, jam bands are bands that people like to smoke pot to. I don't agree with that, but that's what some people say.
Well, those are the people who are listening to the music. Why? That's why, right?
Well, you know what? I got to say, I got into the jam band world, I should say, from jazz, actually. Like listening to Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, like just crazy stuff like that. And I got into Phish basically from that. But I would say, to me, it seems like jazz and jam band, to me they seem like more of a I used the word inclination earlier, but I think that the word might be disposition, maybe. Like there seems to be an expectation, like you said, from the audience of what they're going to get. They're going to get like a musical experience as opposed to like their songs that they've heard 1,000 times kind of repeated back to them. They're going to get something that they can't get at home, maybe. Maybe that's part of the reason why they were always coming to the shows.
Ah, that's actually a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I never thought about that. So jam bands in general are going to be more likely to be different on stage than they are in their albums. That's definitely, it makes sense. And you could say the same thing about jazz artists, for sure. It was Dean Budnick, by the way, who is credited by popularizing the term. It was the name that I couldn't think of. The guy from Relics that they kind of coined it.
Okay.
I had to look it up.
So we're back. Quick question for you both, and this is just something that I got from watching the videos, which if you're interested, you can go to YouTube and you can check out Bears Gone Phishin on there. They've got some really great produced stuff at the Poorhouse that's amazing to watch. It sounds great on your home theater. I got to recommend it. It's almost like you're at the concert. In some of these longer sections of improvisation, what is going on with you? What's going on in your head? Are you thinking about what you're doing? Are you listening? I mean, is it a combination of things? I'd like to hear both of you respond to that.
For me, it depends on if I'm playing bass or guitar, because they're just two completely different roles within the band. But in Bears Gone Phishin, I'm playing bass, and I'm kind of walking a tightrope between improvising, but also trying to stay somewhat locked in with the drummers. I say somewhat locked in because it's not like it has to be super tight. I don't have to play on every downbeat of the kick drum or anything, but you got to stay locked in and improvise at the same time. So it's kind of walking a tightrope. Maybe Andy can answer this more, but on electric lead guitar, you're much more open to improvisation and just going with what you feel in the moment without any risk of, you can't really do anything wrong. It's like whatever you do works. So what do you think, Andy, on guitar?
Yeah, I mean, you said what is going through your head essentially.
Yeah, what's going on with you? What is your like? Yeah.
Well, I think ideally, nothing should be going through your head. Really, you should be communicating purely through your instrument, without your brain as sort of a middleman. So ideally, you just want to get into that moment, and as soon as it comes, you want to say exactly what you would say. Like if you're asking me a question right now, and I'm not really thinking about what my answer is going to be, but I'm just kind of talking. You want to do the same thing with music, because music is a language. So I think that expression often can be muted or neutered by overthinking it. You know what I mean? So if I'm trying to improvise, and that's kind of the nature of the term improvise, is making it up as you go along, I really don't want to be having anything going through my head. And it's a really good question, because if I'm, for example, improvising and something is going through my head, whether it's musically or something that has nothing to do with music, I'm just not going to be as connected with what I'm communicating or playing on the instrument. And that's 100% real. Playing all these shows over the years, it's like a meditation process to get your head clear, so that you can actually.
How do you get into that headspace? I mean, is it before the show, during the show? I mean, how are you guys like handling that?
I don't necessarily prepare or anything.
Okay.
Not consciously, at least. But I think for me, when we're improvising, especially when it's a section of a song where we're maybe jamming from one song into another song, so there's like an improv section to like segue from one song to another, there is a destination we're trying to get to, which is the next song, whatever that we might be switching keys or kind of switching the rhythm up a little bit. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're on a journey. You don't know how to get there necessarily, but you know where you're supposed to get. And so you just kind of work your way through it,
That sounds like a metaphor for life.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's came out of nowhere, Bobby. You're a poet.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of this metaphor I heard once about getting somewhere in your car. Like if it's dark out and you're driving somewhere that might be 30 miles away, you know where your destination is, but you can only see 50 feet in front of you, and you just eventually get there. So you don't have it all plotted out yet. You just kind of are in the moment, and you're watching the way the streets go, and you're following the directions, and then you end up in your destination. And that's kind of what it's like when you're jamming, for me at least, is like, yeah, it's good to clear your mind and not have a lot of preconceived notions of what you're doing, but you also know, okay, well, there is a destination we're trying to get to here. And this is maybe more bass centered, because the bassist really, at least in when I play with you, Andy, especially, can kind of like signify when key changes, and I'm under that. I'm under the rest of the band, kind of like, and if I go up to maybe the next, a whole step or something, they can hear that and they go with me.
Right.
So I'm definitely, it's like a journey that we're all on together. And it's improvisational, but it's also, hey, well, we're trying to get to this place. Unless it's just a totally ambient jam where there is no destination and we're all just completely, flying off the top of our heads, and that's fun too. But it kind of just depends on what what kind of improv you're doing in the moment.
And is the crowds factoring into that, I'm supposing? I know it does for me whenever I'm looking out and people are responding back to me. It's kind of taking me somewhere too. I mean, does that happen for you guys, or?
Yeah, I think to what Bobby's saying, like, I think it is a bass guitar discrepancy in intention to some degree, because if Bobby's like going from one tonal center to another and leading us towards the next song, that gives me or anybody else who's improvising without thinking about that the ability to do that, to not think about it. And then all of a sudden, the greatest feeling is when you're like, all of a sudden you realize that you're in the key that the next song is going to be in, and you didn't even know what the next song was, but that's thanks to Bobby.
I love that they're giving all this love to the bass player, man.
Well, no, I think it's critical. Like the guitar player can't be free and just noodle around without some sort of a destination or some sort of intention in direction. So, using the metaphor of driving around, Bobby may be like saying, we're going to turn left here, we're going to turn left here, and the whole time the guitar player is just sitting there with his eyes closed going, you know what I mean? So it is kind of a luxury to not have to steer it. If I'm playing, I mean, ultimately you just want to follow the other musicians, and I do think that it starts with the bass player and the drummer. The guitar players generally are not going to be able to effectively make a key change as well and as deliberately as a bass player would, and a guitar player usually can't affect a rhythmic change in the same way that the bass player or drummer could. So it's important to realize the role of the instrument.
It's interesting that you say that too, because a lot of the guests I've had on the show, I've kind of broached this topic before, and one of the things that I've heard from them and other styles of music, the bass and drums are expected to be, like you were saying earlier, locked in, being steady, not leading, basically like making the singer sound good, making the soloist sound good, making sure the song's together. And you're basically saying that the bass and the drums are kind of shoving the project forward, and you're kind of like responding to that.
I think in improvisational situations, in parts of the music that are improvisational, that's the case. The way that you're describing it, I think that applies in the music that we play. During verse and solo sections, okay. I mean, during verse and chorus sections that are like composed, but during a jam where it's completely improvised, that's kind of really the exclusive time where I think what we were talking about applies.
Excellent. I just wanted to make sure we kind of define that a little bit as we went. All right. So how do you guys prepare for this unique tribute experience? I am talking specifically about Bears Gone Phishin. I saw a lot of great talent on the stage the video I looked at. You have a lot of people up there. How did you guys get ready for these shows? Would you rigorous rehearsals, demo tapes?
I mean, we're all coming into it, pretty familiar with the music. I mean, me particularly, I know all any of the Phish or Grateful Dead songs that we're playing, I've probably played before. I was less familiar with the Widespread Panic stuff, so I am learning those songs. But yeah, we send out, song ideas. Hey, what do you guys want to play? We figure out, okay, here's 20 songs or however many it's going to take to play the gig, and we work on them on our own time, and then usually get together to rehearse. And, we try to keep it pretty loose, though. I mean, we try to, pay our respects to the bands and sound somewhat like them, but also keep our own unique voices within the band as far as, like, I don't learn every single bass line. I don't necessarily try to sound exactly this way or that, but just kind of a way that works for me and, sounds close enough, I guess. But
you're interpreting the music.
Yes,
like a jazz player
open to
would
interpret it.
Yeah, sure.
My approach to it is, we have these the conversations that Bobby's talking about where we pick the songs out, but once the songs are picked out, I literally do this in every project that I play in. I just sit down and I transcribe the song in terms of like writing out the lyrics and then writing out the chord changes. And then that helps me just kind of memorize it. If there's any like guitar licks that are specific, then I'll go back and figure out what those are exactly. And then if there's any improvisational sections, I'll kind of try and figure out what the parameters of those sections are, meaning like where they start, what's the sign for them to end, and then also like where does it tend to go, where can it go? And that's not to say that we're going to be limited to that space, but that is, at least I have a starting point of understanding where maybe the audience thinks it's going to go or where it's gone before. And that's the same way that I approach it in Bears and Runaway Gin. And then from there, I think it's more of just getting together with the other musicians and trying to figure out what feels and sounds right. You kind of have to let all the other stuff go once you get in the room with the other musicians, in my opinion. I mean, because we're not the musicians that we're different people, and we don't want to force ourselves to pretend to be someone else when it doesn't feel right, because that's going to come across on stage to the other performers and also to the audience. Everybody wants to be authentic in the moment, but still true to the underlying the idea and the construct of the song, which is sort of a tightrope in and of itself. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're getting your satisfaction from expressing yourself, and also your satisfaction of expressing that you respect the underlying song and that you know the underlying music, and that you have received the message that it sends. You know what I mean?
So let's hear a little bit of that now. First song we're listening to is "Story of a Ghost" that you're going to be releasing soon, correct?
Yes, next Monday we're going to release all three of these songs.
Next Monday, the show won't be out.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be like about a month from now, actually.
Monday, January 20th. So 3 months ago, we're going to release these three Godzilla Ghosts and Feel Like a Stranger. So by the time you hear this, they're already going to be out and they're already going to have millions of views. But you can experience it for yourself. Actually, you probably already have at this point.
Yeah, I got to tell people all the time, I'm a one-man production facility, so things take as long as they take.
Hey, man, I just finished mixing down these tracks from October 31st.
So you get it.
Last night.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. back. I usually have guests respond to some of the questions that were posed from the last show's guests, but I completely blanked and forgot to ask and record them last week. So
Perfect.
we get a chance to do that with Ward and Russ. I apologize. But I did get a listener submission, Alan Brizendine. What is the greatest show you guys have played? And it can be as Bears Gone Phishin. I know it's kind of a new band-ish, but just in general. And why was it so important to you?
I played a really fun show at the Charleston Music Hall. I don't even remember, 5-7 years ago, something like that. John Helenko hooked me up with the gig. He was on guitar and I was on guitar also. They were doing a thing. They would do them every now and then. It was called like Women and fill in the blanks, right? So they did like Women and a few different bands, and this particular one was Women and Grateful Dead. So there was all female singers. I was on guitar. John Helenko was on guitar. John Picard was on drums. John F. Kennedy was on bass, and it was just really fun. I didn't have to sing, and I enjoy singing. I love singing, but in this particular gig, it was just, hey, I'm just playing guitar. I didn't even have a mic in front of me. It was just fun and easy, and the crowd had so much fun. And I just remember particularly that was a really fun night. So thank you, John Helenko, for hooking me up with it. And the music hall is a very, it just sounds great in there, and it was just a really fun night.
All right. Andy, what's lingering? What's
Wow. Yeah, I mean, trying to think of one specific show that's like the high water mark. I mean, there are lots. There are lots of them, and I feel like it's usually the first thing that pops into my mind are just ones with really big crowds. But man, I mean, that time we played at Janus Live was super fun. Remember that huge venue in St. Petersburg, Hard Rock Cafe in Chicago, July 4th, 2015, after the GD50 show. Man, I think Rooster Walk was a really fun show. I remember that being really fun. Golly, there's so many. It's tough. I don't typically think of shows in that comparison kind of way. I'm kind of always looking forward to the next one. If I'm going back through archives and I'm like listening to something, it's hard for me to remember the way that I felt when I got off stage, or remember the way that I felt on stage, and then compare it with a different day, because I'm just kind of short-sighted in that way. I feel like that I'm probably like that because I don't know that comparing necessarily is going to do anything to help me, and that I think that it could actually end up stealing the joy from something else. Comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Yeah.
So what is my favorite show? The next one.
The next show.
Perpetually the next
Always
show.
looking forward?
Always the next show.
Okay. Well, let's hear another song. This is Feels Like a Stranger.
Set 2 from Halloween at the Charleston Poorhouse. We started out the second set with Godzilla, and then we played Ghost, and then we played Feel Like a Stranger. All three of those were first time played for us as a band.
Yeah, and it was a Halloween night, so we were picking like spooky songs,
are back. That was great. I'd like to try something new with you guys, if that's okay. The Questionator 5000.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, for those of you listening at home, it is essentially a stupid app that I have on my phone, but I have filled it out full of questions that musicians have donated to me. And I don't know, I can't see what they are from here, so I'm going to hit the spin button. And Andy, I'm going to give you the first shot at answering. Okay?
Whoa!
Yeah, man. And I think it's even got like a clicky sound. Local music hero and why?
Oh, wow. Man, I've got a lot of local music heroes.
Well, you can pick more than one because it's not that kind of show.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Caldwell comes to mind. I love Jeff as a person and his whole, the way he approaches music. I definitely, if you don't know Jeff Caldwell, check him out. He's a local legend. He played with Bruce Hampton for a long time. Man, Ron Wiltrout I really love as a musician. Right. He just is such a thoughtful player and super interesting. I'm kind of trying to think of like these guys aren't old, but like kind of like the elder statesmen. I mean, fucking Ron's probably my age. Actually, he is. Wait, are we getting old? Nah. Okay.
We're musicians. We're not fucking football players or anything. We can go until they tell us to quit.
Okay, good. Lee Barber, definitely. Lee Barber is a really sort of legendary local guitar player in my mind. He just plays in a way that kind of like Jeff Caldwell, and he just plays in a way that I don't really completely understand, and I want to understand better, and I really like it, and I kind of am drawn to players that I don't understand what they're doing.
All right, Andy, thanks for that. Let's give this fake wheel another fake spin, shall we? What irritates you musically?
Ooh.
Gear.
Gear?
I love gear. I'm a gearhead, and I think music is my career, but gear is more like my hobby. Like I'll collect, I have gear at home that I don't even gig with anymore, but I just still have it because I like having it.
You're smart for doing that. I've sold so many things I wish I could have back.
Yeah, and a lot of it, is not lowering in value, so it's not, but like sometimes I just wish electricity had never been invented and we just had acoustic guitars and that was it. Because when you're on a gig and a piece of gear fails or the battery dies in one of your pedals or something like that, it's just so frustrating, and it makes me wish I used less gear on stage because it's less to go wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I love pedals and I love all kinds of stuff, but...
Well, let's drill into that for a second, because one of the things I was saying earlier is I noticed that you guys have really good gear. You've got a Languedoc guitar, I think, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Let's start with you, Bobby. What is your stage rig for Bears Gone Phishin? What do you?
Well, it kind of depends. I go back and forth. On the next gig, I will probably use my Modulus bass, which coincidentally, all three, Phil Lesh, Mike Gordon, and Schools, have used those. They don't, not for their whole careers, but they're known as those are some of their main instruments. But I also use a 5-string P bass, which is fun. And my bass amp, lately I got a Ampeg V4B, which is a tube head, 100
That's a
watts.
great amp.
Yeah, I got the reissue. It's a new one that has a DI out. So it's not one of the vintage 70s ones.
Nice.
It's a brand new one.
That's post power amp 2 breakups.
It is.
Yeah, it's cool.
No, the DI is actually pre-power amp,
Okay.
unfortunately. Yeah, so if you're going to get all that tube goodness out of it, you got to mic it up too.
Okay.
But even the
Nice.
DI out, which is preamp tube, still sounds amazing.
Nice.
And an Ampeg cab. If it's a gig where I need like a smaller stage or we don't need to be as loud, I'll bring my Mark bass, little 112, which sounds great too. It's just a tube preamp, doesn't have the whole tube power section. But for a smaller, quieter gig, that sounds great too. And I have a few pedals I use. And
What's your favorite pedal?
you know what it is? It's I used to have a whole bunch of pedals, and then Matt Thompson turned me on to God, I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's a multi-effects pedal.
That little zoom.
Yeah, it's HX Effects.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Andy, who makes that? Helix?
Oh yeah, Line 6.
Yeah, Line 6. You've got the bigger one. I've got the Line 6 HX Effects, which is like, it's just a multi. It's got a bunch of different, effects you can use on it. And I've got on bass, I'll use not many. And I'll go a whole night without even using it,
Right.
But 90% of the night, I'm not using any effects. But I'll throw on a auto wah, lower octave. If I'm slapping, I might turn reverb on because that just really like accentuates that. So I'll plug that. The Line 6 HX Effects, good stuff. Cool. It's not even that expensive. It was like $400 or something. Like for all the effects that are in it, it's really, And getting back to what you asked, what my pet peeve was, or whatever the question was.
What irritates you musically?
Right. Part of that is little connection cables, the little ones that go in between your pedals, because those just always they're always
something about them. They're just not meant to last, are they?
Right. So this way, I've just got one effects pedal that has all of them.
Yeah.
And up until I got this one, I'd had a few that just weren't that great. And this is the first one I've had. I was like, well, this is a really, these tones are pretty much just as good as having all the separate effects pedals, but without having to worry about the connection.
Right. All the powering issues and all that stuff.
Right. You just power it up with one thing. You don't have a bunch of little connection cables in between. So I like that.
What you running on Greenberg?
I've in Bears Gone Phishin, I've got a Languedoc guitar, which I'm typically going to use for the Phish songs.
Could you explain the purpose of that? The Languedoc name and all that.
The Languedoc guitar is a fully hollow 24 fret guitar that is Trey Anastasio or Anastasio. I don't really even know how to pronounce it after all these years.
I don't either. And
exactly. I don't think it matters.
Anastasia, that's what
it's kind of like Alan Brizendine, like
Brizendine,
take either way. But
it's Brizendine actually.
Yeah, I think so too. But I just still like to say Brizendine.
I do too.
So anyway, it's it's made by Paul Languedoc, who made Trey's guitars, and he built Trey's cabinets, and he was their Phish's sound guy until 2009, I think, or 2010. And it's a really cool guitar. It's made out of Claro walnut, and I've had it since 2017. It's very high sustain guitar. It's pretty hard to play. And it's got like a Stratocaster kind of scale length, but it's got kind of more of a jazz sound because it's hollow. And then I have a limbic guitar that I've been using, that I got specifically for Bears Gone Phishin, that to get more of like a Bob Weir kind of sound, or more of a Jerry kind of sound if I'm playing lead. But either way, it's just got that Grateful Dead kind of sound because of the active pickups. And that's a 2019 Alembic. Darling is the name of the model. And those two guitars pretty much are giving me everything that I need, although I just got a Les Paul that I might start using on the widespread stuff, because I don't really feel like that the Languedoc or the Alembic sounds right on the Panic stuff. And I don't think anybody in Panic did play a Les Paul, but I don't know, for some reason it seems like it's
kind of a rocking guitar, not a rocking kind of band.
It seems like it just
sounds about right. I can see that.
Yeah, it kind of seems like what we need. But I know Wallace Mullinax is changing guitars from show to show, and Sean Mills plays a Telecaster pretty much exclusively. So I'm trying to make sure that the guitar tone that I'm using is not too close to someone else's, because I think it creates more texture, or more like contrast of tones. So then after that, I'm going to my amplifier that I'm using is a Mesa Boogie Mark III Red Stripe, and Hard Truckers 212 JG1 cabinet, which is the Jerry Garcia cabinet, which was built by the Hard Truckers, who I believe was started by Bear Owsley, who's the same guy, or one of the guys who started Alembic guitars. So those are all Grateful Dead things. Trey played cabinets that were built by Paul Languedoc, going back to that were inspired or modeled after this Hard Truckers JG1, which is a 13-ply Baltic birch cabinet, which is open back and it's tuned to D. And so if you knock on it, it's a D. And mine has 2 Celestion Vintage 30 speakers. And I basically am using that amp rig just for Runaway Gin, and I haven't changed my amp rig for Bears. Although, like Bobby was saying, when we're playing a smaller room, I'll bring a Bogner Atma, which is like a 112 because it doesn't take up as much room.
Those are great amps.
Yeah, and I really love it. But it actually, in a way, I feel like it kind of sounds a little bit better in Bears. So I might start leaning more towards that, because also Sean's playing a Mesa. But then my pedals are just crazy right now. They've been crazy. They're always crazy, but it goes to a Line 6 Helix, which is the bigger model of what Bobby was talking about before, the multi-effects unit by Line 6. And then I'm routing it out to a Whammy 2-pedal, first in the chain, and then it goes to a Bonsai distortion pedal, which is basically like a tube screamer. And then I've got a tube screamer, which is an 808 Silver Mod by Analog Band. I've got a bunch of different settings on that Bonsai that I'm kind of experimenting with these days. But that's a great new pedal. That's probably my most recent pedal. And then it goes to the Ross compressor, and then it goes to the Boomerang and the Supapus, which is a delay pedal. But yeah.
So you're using that compressor at the end of your chain?
The compressor is after the distortion, which is the way that Trey uses it. It basically makes it so that your tones are a little bit more, or your volume on your distortion channels are a little bit more even. And also, it's just kind of like part of Trey's sound. He often, or his classic sound, I should say, it changes over the years, and he's using the compressor again now. But it's it's hard to explain what it is. It's just kind of a squeaky, like squishy, squished down kind of sound. I don't know. Yeah, it's cool. I like compressor.
Yeah. All right, let's hear a song. Let's hear another song. We're going to Godzilla. I know this is probably not the order that you played them in, but this is the order that I listened to them in, so I don't know.
I like it.
All right, here we go. back. So, any final thoughts you guys like to kind of get out there to your fans, to people who are going to come check it out?
Yeah, I wanted to mention just about how Bears Gone Phishin got started, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but so Andy Greenberg, Wallace Mullinax, and Sean Mills all grew up in Florence, South Carolina, and you guys, all play guitar, and Andy, has played in a Phish tribute band, Wallace Grateful Dead tribute band, and Sean Widespread Panic tribute band.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Right, so
what's
it's
in the
just,
water out there, man?
Yeah,
You guys got some guitar playing going on.
Lead.
and so Andy just figured, hey, let's get the three childhood friends together in a band and represent all three of those bands that we're covering, and we're having a lot of fun with it. We're kind of just getting started, really. We've only played a handful of shows and really enjoying it. So come check us out.
What's coming down the pipe for Bears?
I think we're doing March 8th at Asheville Music Hall and March 14th at the Charleston Poorhouse. Those are basically the two venues that we're starting out this whole thing at doing, and absolutely what Bobby said. We played a show in Columbia. It was Jerry Fest, I think, and all three bands, The Reckoning, Machine Funk, and Runaway Gin, were on the lineup back to back to back. And so I was basically sitting there like watching this, and I'm just like, you know what? Why don't we just like all like make a band out? Because you think about these fusion tributes and stuff like that, which are happening all the time, and it's like it's weird that Sean, like Bobby said, Sean and Wallace and I just happened to be the guitar players for those three specific bands in this area. So it almost was like one of those things where it's like, wait a minute, why haven't we done that yet? And I really kind of kicked myself when we were at that gig. I was like, that's really stupid that we haven't done that after all these years. So here we are. It finally happened. But
that's cool. You're having a good time, right?
Yeah, cool. I love it.
You guys, are you planning to write some music together? I mean, how's this? Where does the future going for the band? I mean,
no plans to write on my side. I mean, I always love writing stuff, but I think with this particular project, there's a really high demand for it. And I mean, we've got some shows that are coming up that are pretty far away from here, and I don't think in this project we're really going to lean into the originals anytime soon. And I think it's because, frankly, like I think there's so much for us to explore in what we've already undertaken that it'll take 10, 20 years for us to get to the point where we're like really all comfortable with all three catalogs.
Okay. Cool. One aspect of it that we can be kind of artistic and unique with is kind of one of the main points of why we're doing it is to combine the three bands. So like when we're writing set lists, we can say, okay, well, here, this song's in A minor, and then let's go into a different song after that, and this one works into that, and segue this into that, and kind of like gel it all together in our own way.
Right, sounds like a DJ in a way.
Yeah, and cool. We're not writing the music, obviously, but we are able to affect how it's being conveyed to the crowd, and the set lists, and specifically segueing from song to song and finding ways that it works, whether it's like thematically, if the lyrics of the song seem to be a similar theme, or if it's just, hey, this is in A minor and that one's in C, so we can just jump right up there easily, and kind of plan it that way. And Andy's really good at that, kind of planning set lists. And we stray from the set list too. It's not like we have to stick to it, but it's fun to kind of plan, hey, what would we do if we were in all three of these bands and we were trying to bring them all together? And that's, what we're doing.
Yeah. There is a lot of compositional energy going into that sort of thing. And also in the space of an individual jam, I think it's cool to have all three guitar players it's sort of like playing a little bit more like Jerry perhaps, and a little bit more like Trey, and a little bit more like Mikey Hauser, and then sort of putting them in the different contexts. In our three shows that we've played so far, some of the coolest moments I think was just being on stage and realizing in real time how different each of the three bands is sonically, how they sound and feel those feel those boundaries sort of breaking down in the middle of a jam, where all of a sudden you're like, wow, because they're not as close sonically and feel wise as I originally thought. And I would imagine than most people think. It's really kind of an effort to bridge those three sounds in the course of a jam, and I think that's a lot of our creative energy is going towards that in the individual jams from each night.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I would just give a big shout out to the rhythm section, Wes Powers on drums and Steven Sandifer on percussion, and the two of them together just really create a big a big sound, and it's a pleasure to play bass with them. It makes my job easier because they're just syncopating so well and just really creating this, pocket, but really bigger than that. And I just kind of, it makes my job easier playing with guys like that as a bassist.
Yeah, actually, I really got what you guys are talking about in terms of first of all, the rhythm section is amazing. Wes and Steven are amazing, but I liked hearing how like Wallace, his approach to guitar definitely comes from that Grateful Dead tradition, and yours is obviously coming from Phish and stuff. It was interesting to hear him doing that on Ghost.
Exactly. I think that
you doing that on Stranger,
I'm very attracted to that sort of fantasy concept of like, hey, what would it sound like if Jerry played over a Phish song, or what would it sound like if Mikey Hauser played over a Phish song? I think that kind of dream the idea is what's propelling this project. It's sort of like, and I hear that from people at the crowd at the show that I talk to afterwards. It's just like something that it's something that your imagination can create, like a fantasy, and we're kind of we're trying to do our best to our abilities of making that actually happen. And yeah, it's really cool, man.
I think you're doing a good job of that, actually.
Thank you.
And so you guys are kind of like the Avengers.
Yeah, it is like that, man. In game, this is the
team
end
up.
game.
Yeah, the big team up at the end.
Yeah.
And I get to be all three bassists,
Yeah, right.
So I just I don't necessarily sound like any of them 100%, but I get to
but you get in the wheelhouse,
choose.
though. You definitely get in the
and
wheelhouse.
I get to pick and choose things I want to do here and do there, and hey, this would be fun here, and hey, it would be fun to play like a Mike Gordon slapping kind of thing with like a flanger and some reverb over a Grateful Dead song, right?
Yeah, I heard that. I think I even know which part you're talking about, because I listened to that music a few times over.
Well, that's a big thing, like Mike Gordon during, I don't know, like Mike's song. He'll do a lot of kind of flanger reverb stuff and get kind of weird. And it's fun to like do that and say, okay, what would Mike do? But we're on a Grateful Dead song, and kind of do it there instead. And kind of, it's just fun. It's like it's kind of limitless opportunities of what you, and I don't necessarily plan that. I'm in the moment and I'm like, hey, this groove reminds me of this other song. I'm going to throw this in there, and maybe one of the other guys hears it and they go to it. And it's very open to that kind of interpretation.
Okay. I've been asking all my guests just to kind of change gears back to the audience, which is a big part of both of your experiences, I'm sure. What would you like to say to them? If they're listening.
Wait, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Well, what would you want to say to your audience right now? I mean, like if you could talk to them directly about what you've done the last several years or anything like that.
Well, thank you for coming. I mean, I can't believe we've been doing Wednesdays with The Reckoning. This is 15 years now. Every Wednesday, rain or shine, unless it's a full-on hurricane or Christmas Day or something. So we couldn't have done it without people coming out. So thank you guys for coming and not getting bored of us. And we do our best to keep the song list fluctuating, so we don't play the same songs, because if we're playing week after week, we want to switch up the songs. So we do what we can to try to keep it fun for everybody, but at the end of the day, the people that come are the ones that are keeping it all going, so we appreciate that.
I would also like to say thank you so much for coming out. I think that without the audience, without crowds, we'd be less likely to continue doing what we're doing. So we really owe everything to the crowds. And I'd also like to say that we're excited, that I'm excited about the future of all the different things that we can do from where we are right now, and I think that it's a really good time right now to be a music fan. I think that the scene that we're a part of is probably going to grow faster than it has in a long time over the next 5 or 10 years.
Okay, let's drill into that for just 1 second, because I was going to lead into some ways that maybe the Charleston scene could improve. I mean, I know we all appreciate it, the opportunities that this place gives us, but what do you guys think that would be? Can get us there where you're talking?
It's a really good question. I think Charleston music scene has done a really good job of taking people from different genres and different bands and mixing them together. You'll notice that in Charleston, people from different genres, I would say, are more friendly with each other than they are in other places that I've lived. And I think that kind of melting pot mentality is something that will ultimately enable Charleston to create its own sound. Which it's always been one of those things since I got here. It's like, what is the Charleston sound? Mm-hmm. Not that a specific place needs to have a sound, but you think about, the Seattle sound of the 90s or whatever, but I feel like Charleston, and, obviously there's a New Orleans sound and all that. There really isn't a Charleston sound. When I first moved here, it was kind of like, well, is it kind of like white boy reggae, kind of thing? You know what I mean? And I think that that sound is evolving, and in order to make it better, I think the best thing that we can do is just get more people out at shows. I think it's all just about the sheer numbers. So, musicians telling other people about their shows, and audience people communicating with each other, crowd people that are going to shows, bring friends along, and that's the best way that we can build the scene. I think is just being aware of what shows are when, and going out and seeing live music in general. But that, to answer the question in another way, I think that the Charleston music scene is doing fantastic.
Yeah,
and it's my favorite music scene of anywhere that I've ever lived. So it's kind of hard for me to think of things that we could do better.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that in Charleston, musicians, at least, all the ones that I play with, and even some guys that I don't really play with much, but I know them, we all seem to want to help each other. It's not like a it's not as, obviously there might be a little competition, but it's not a competitive thing. Some of my best friends in Charleston are bassists and guitarists, and as a bassist and guitarist, technically they're my direct competition, right, for gigs,
right.
Or
especially in other kinds of jobs. Markets.
Yeah, they'll get maybe another bassist or a guitarist will get a gig offer, and I'll hear about, I wish I got that offer, but hey, good for him. I'm glad he got it. Whatever. I talk to bassists and guitarists all the time who are some of my best friends in this world, and again, it's not like a competition thing. It's like, hey, I'm proud of you. There's enough work to go around, and if you work hard, you're going to be successful. So it's like, it's just a cool feeling to know that these are guys that we're all kind of in this town, on some level, I guess, competing for gigs, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like we're competitive. It feels like we're all kind of trying to help each other. I read today that Charleston is, after Las Vegas, is the second most popular wedding destination in America. And I play a lot of wedding gigs, and I appreciate that. Travis Allison Band, he's kept me busy. And so that's great. That's just work.
Right.
So the fact that there's so many of, venue gigs, bar gigs, wedding gigs, private party gigs, any kind of gig you want is here. And there's just enough to go around if you work hard. So it's nice to know that we can all coexist and make a good living without having to be competitive about it.
All right. Anything else, guys?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having us. Been great chatting with you.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking time out of your busy lives to chat with us. Thanks again to everyone listening at home. If you like the show, share the show and take a second to rate the show according to your conscience. It really is the best way to help. We'll be back with another Slightly Mighty episode in 2 weeks. Next week's show will be our first instrument-specific show, and we'll be talking with several area bass players about all things bass guitar. Until then, go see a show, buy some merch, click on some links, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.